there's always somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like there's always somebody who's getting the raw end. You know what I mean?
You know, um, yeah, you know, like I'd love to be politically correct.
Right. But you don't have to be. I
I
mean,
know, but you know, as an artist, you know, I really don't like to talk about these things. And you
sure,
know,
sure.
next thing you know, somebody from the the media sees this interview and oh, look what he said, and oh, he's like that.
And
He's
then, yeah, look at that
yeah,
guy.
you know, I'd rather not point fingers or um, look, we're living in a different world today, and it's not the same. This is not the 80s or the 90s. We're now we are dealing with a lot of things, you know, and yeah,
Money issue.
and
Now, I want to talk about, and the reason I brought it up is because your show
yeah,
that you're in, Zach's show will take you back to a different time. It's like if you watch an episode of Mad Men,
yeah,
you're reminded that women weren't allowed to smoke in certain places, or women this or this. It's a different time. So your show that you do, Unforgettable, is a concert called A Trip Down Memory Lane, and so it's very much like a review, if you will, of the 50s, 60s, and 70s music that we all love. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't love 50s, 60s, or 70s music. I mean, come on, what's not to like, right? So I'm sure your show is going over wonderfully all over the world as you're touring, right?
yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's a review, and just want to mention we're three headliners. It's myself, Stella. She's the lady of the house. She does the Shirley Bassey's, and she does the you know, all the grand. And we have Charles Garrett from Chicago. He's fantastic. He takes care of the Motown and the you know, the soul, and I do the rock and roll and the Sinatra and all that. So yeah, it's very well rounded. We've got you cannot do such a show without Elvis. I do James Brown.
So, so the question I want to know is like, how'd you get started with this? Like, this doesn't seem like the average career trajectory is like, hey man, when I grow up, I'm going to be doing a 50s review in Europe. Like, how did you get
Well,
into that?
look, I've always listened. I grew up with this music because this is what my parents, my folks, that's all they heard at home. So I knew I didn't even need to learn one lyric to any of these songs. I knew these songs off by heart. So it's just a matter of going up on stage and producing the show. Um, yeah, so the producers, the creators of the show, are very good friends of mine from Europe, and they called me. This is while we were in Burbank in California, and they said, "Look, we're putting a show together, and we've got a few sold out venues."
Wow.
They booked it before we even they put the show together.
Of course.
They said, "Are you available to travel?" And I said to Nicole, my wife, "Are you available to come with me?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that was it. That
we
was
gave
it.
up everything basically, and we went on the road with this, and it's great. So
Does it ever amaze you when you're out there performing this show
yeah,
how this music from America has reached people in South Africa and Europe and Australia and Japan? Like, you're performing for people who probably come up to you after the show and they're like, man, I really love that song that you did. It reminds me of when I was a kid. And you're like, but you're from Botswana. What do you, like, how can this be your song? You know what I mean?
you know, yes, absolutely, it amazes me. The the wonderful world of record companies, like you were talking earlier on. Um, yes, I get that all the time from people of all age groups. You know, they come to me, "Wow, what was that song? That was fantastic," and that, and it's for the younger generational, it's more educational in a way because they're seeing something for the first time, and for the older generation, it's a nostalgic trip down memory lane.
Sure, sure.
As far as yes, this music, this catalog being heard in all different countries. You know, back in the day, you know, the only way to get this kind of music across was to go to music festivals, Midem in France at Cannes. That's where they got together,
Right.
and they basically sold their music to different territories. So when James Brown or Ray Charles released an album, their record company went there, and each territory decided where this was going to get to.
Sure.
That's how it worked. So
I want to share with you this crazy story. So, I'm black, and I grew up being black. And so, when I was a kid, my parents were listening to Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, right? But what I realized a couple of years ago is that the records that my parents were listening to were the original records of What's Going On, Respect. Every Stevie Wonder album that my parents brought home, I realized recently was the first actual Stevie Wonder record from the 70s. You know what I'm saying? So when I thought about that, I thought, gosh, how these songs have stayed in our consciousness for so long. I mean, some of those records, I mean, can you imagine if the Bruno Mars Uptown Funk song, 50 years from now, we're still listening to it going, I remember that Old Town Funk. Put that Old Town Funk on for me one more time. Yeah.
if I may say, we can seriously thank and TV shows like American Idol and X Factor, all those shows have helped bring this back. Because if you think about it,
Sure.
when these